Welcome to Cold War Conversations, the home of real stories of the Cold War.
I was interviewed by a Polish woman, and she said to me, "Your story is so unique that I thought it was fiction. I thought it was a Hollywood script gone bad until I looked you up and saw that this really happened."
This is Cold War Conversations. If you're new here, you've come to the right place to listen to first-hand Cold War history accounts. Do make sure you follow us in your podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. The communist Polish press called it Kentomania, the excitement surrounding a 23-year-old called Kent Washington who made history as the first American and the first black American to sign a professional sports contract behind the Iron Curtain. His creative and electrifying gameplay won over audiences, earning him admiration and respect. But beyond basketball, the warmth and hospitality of the Polish people left a lasting impression, making him a beloved figure in the country's sporting history. Kent was inspired to write a memoir, Kentamania, a black basketball virtuoso in communist Poland. I'm delighted to welcome Kent Washington to our Cold War conversation. I guess the caveat I want to put in before we get too far, Kent, is I know very little about basketball.
That's quite all right, because to me, basketball was the backdrop. The story was basically a character reference, of me through my youth using basketball as a tool to further my aspirations. And they led me to communist Poland. So it was just a backdrop. The real story, I think, is how I embraced the Polish culture, and they embraced me also.
Indeed they did. Indeed they did. But let's just go back to the start with you. Where did you grow up and who was in your immediate family?
Yeah, so I'm from New Rochelle, New York. It's a suburb of Manhattan. And my father is a detective, actually the first black detective in New Rochelle. My mom worked at a factory, and I have an older brother, Kurt, who is my absolute mentor.
He figures quite strongly in the book as well. How did you first become interested in basketball?
Yeah, so around the age of 13, I realized that I was a lot different than my friends. I began to want to practice basketball. It inundated my life, my thoughts, and I found solitude and joy in absolutely practicing it alone. I didn't want to be around others. I wanted to, what I call, purposely practice basketball.
And I mean, those sort of practice techniques are quite unusual. Sort of people looked at you and thought, what the hell is Kent doing out there on his own?
Yeah, I had a special practice technique where I practiced full court alone. And I would run up and down the court nonstop, shooting, dribbling, and I would do it for a good hour plus. And I didn't play games that often, so I would just purposely practice full court alone. And that's what kind of, I think, perpetuated the need to continue practicing, because I got very good very quick.
And how is school for you aside from the basketball?
High school, no problem. I was a pretty smart person. I could retain information when I read. High school wasn't that difficult, so I could really combine basketball with my academics there. When I went to college, that's when the problem started to arise, because my parents were no longer helping me with my time management. Now I became just absolutely, totally obsessed with practicing basketball. And it came at a cost because my academics suddenly dropped. But I was able to play. I kept my grade point average at a place where I was still allowed to play basketball. So that worked out.
Yeah, and you make the Southampton College basketball team.
Yes, as a freshman, I wound up starting. Coach Jim Kokelaw, who recruited me, really liked my work ethic. And I had a very imaginative style of play where a lot of people called it like fancy, but it was just the way I played basketball. And I played there all for 4 years. My second year, though, Coach Don Lezak came. He was an assistant coach, and he saw something in me that I didn't see. And he also fed into my work ethic, and he was my personal mentor for the next like 3 years there.
And it's with Southampton College basketball team. There's an invite for the whole team to go and play in Poland. How on earth did that invite arrive at the college?
So, some things are just meant to be. The mayor was a Polish man, and the town council was also Polish, and they received an invitation for Southampton if we wanted to go over and play 7 games in I think 21 days or something like that. So the team wanted to do it, so we did. And it was probably the most important trip I ever took. Little did I know then.
And were you briefed as to what to expect in Poland at that time? What the experience was going to be like?
Yeah, well, the mayor spoke to us a little about the way of life wouldn't be exactly what we were used to, no luxuries. He spoke about the black market there where we shouldn't exchange any money, only do it at the bank. We would probably be asked a lot for things like socks and sneakers and like gear, jeans. So maybe take some extra like basketball socks with us, you know. So they kind of explained that to us, but it was nothing like actually experiencing it.
You may not be aware of this, but I was in Poland in 1980 and my parents took me there on holiday, and it was really interesting because it was so different there, much less advertising, and yeah, very, very different. But anyway, we'll get on to your experiences there. What were your first impressions of the country when you arrived?
Well, as soon as we landed and we got onto the Orbis bus, which is a tour bus, we had two tour guides with us. One's name was Ava. I forgot the other one's name, but Ava and I became very close based on the games there. And as we were driving through Warsaw toward the hotel, I immediately knew we were in a different country. I mean, the fashion of the people was very different. I mean, plaids and stripes and all kinds of different looking clothing. Some fit, some didn't. Traffic, the Maui Fiat, the little cars and things like that. The only thing I kind of recognized was a couple of Mercedes Benz that I think they were taxi cabs. There were lots of buses and there were trams, and there were a lot of people that were waiting at the bus stops and the tram stops, and it made me think that public transportation was extremely important here because loads and loads of dozens of people. And the buildings, those 10 to 12-story gray monotone buildings that must have housed thousands of people that went for blocks and blocks on. That was something I've never seen. And there was beautiful architecture too, as far as we go by some places. They were probably state owned. They had the pillars in the front, the cobblestone that looked like nice granite. I don't know if it was possibly any marble there, but so it was that mixture there. But it was very different. Immediately, we were struck by the difference of what the U.S. looked like and here. The storefronts also weren't very advertising. You saw a couple of radios and a couple of TVs in certain stores, some clothing, some canned goods in stores, but it didn't look advertising at all.
And you're having to play your first game pretty soon after you arrive. Can you give me a view of like the venue, the crowd, the atmosphere? What was it like going into that first game?
Yeah, I'll never forget it. Our first game was against Legia Warszawa, and we took the bus there. And when we got out and we were looking around for the arena, and there was this building there that it looked like a condemned building. And we get out and we go in a door and we come in, and there's a gym floor there. There's baskets there. They took us to the locker room, and that was something that we all just looked at each other, the college teammates, and we were like, okay, this is the locker room. They had a couple of benches. They had hooks on the wall for the clothing, but the main thing was the toilet. It was a hole in the ground with two porcelain footprints be, beside it. There was a pull chain that led to a white container above it. And instead of toilet paper, there was ripped up newspaper stuck to a hook. And Mark McCluskey made a funny comment there. He said, well, newspapers aren't just for reading here in Poland. And we all kind of chuckled. And we got dressed, and we were going to go onto the court for the warm-ups. And a coach came in and said, you guys take all of your clothing with you. Don't leave anything here. And we were like, what? But take everything with you. Don't leave anything here. And later we learned that fans would actually come in and steal our clothes. I mean, there were jeans there and socks and things that they thought were of value. So we take our clothes with us onto our team bench there, and the place is absolutely packed with people. People are everywhere. I've never seen anything like it. We were playing at Southampton College. We don't draw like that. I mean, people, I don't know how many people there were, but it was packed. They were sitting all around the court as well. They were in the bleachers and they were sitting there. So we couldn't even take our layups because we would jump onto people that's sitting on the floor. So they had to kind of help back people up because the baseline and the sidelines couldn't even be seen. I've never seen that kind, and they were chanting constantly. Their chants are it's like a soccer crowd indoors. So what an atmosphere! And the Polish players were bigger, stronger, and better than us. Little did we know until the game actually got started. But we found out that they are professional basketball players. And their center was like 7 for 3. And our center is 6'7". So them standing next to each other just told a story right there. Their style of play was very, very good. Fast paced, great shooters, great passers, great ball handlers, and they were so physical that we had a lot of trouble immediately. And the rules there also different. And I explain in the book the difference between the Federation basketball rules there and the college rules. Much different. So we were 10 points down before we could do anything because of the rules were so different.
Because I think you're causing fouls without really knowing why you're causing fouls, because in college basketball, that would have been a perfectly legal move.
Yeah, there was that, the traveling violation. There were so many things that we were just overwhelmed. And that was a very valuable lesson for us, thinking that Americans are the only ones that know how to play basketball. We learned very quickly that that's not the case.
And how did the crowd react to your team and their play and their style?
Yeah, so although we were getting beat, I was playing my imaginative style with the crowd loved. And I didn't realize it until chants of Washington started to come out. And I was like, what's going on here? Aren't they their crowd? And when I dribbled through my legs or passed a certain way or did something that they have never seen before, they would just cheer and call out Washington. And when the game was over, they come running out and wanting me to sign autographs and, you know, touching me, wanting to sign. And I was like, whoa, this never happened before, And after the game, the journalists, that's when I needed Ava. And she would translate things. They would ask questions about how I got so good, what my special technique. I'm a magician and all this stuff, and I'm trying to answer questions without my teammates are there as well. And I'm kind of the person that wants to be part of the team and doesn't want to stand out. And that was a very uncomfortable situation for me.
How does the rest of the tour go? Is it similar sort of size crowds and intense matches?
Yes. So we played 3 more games in Warsaw, and it was the same thing. Then we went to Lublin, and we played a basketball tournament there, which has 2 other American teams, us, and two Polish teams. And we played there, and it's the same thing. What happened was the Warsaw newspapers got out that I play a special way. By the time we got to Lublin, they had articles already about how I play basketball. And that followed us. So crowds were incredible, absolutely phenomenal. And here we go again with Washington and Southampton. And we got very, very popular very, very quickly. And we were more popular than the other teams from the US because I think of my play. And we were well aware then, the coaching staff, the players, that how I played kind of had us gain this crazy popularity. Although I was uncomfortable at times with the press, it's just how I play. And my teammates were very, very, I guess, supportive is the right word, and saying, Kenny, do your thing, play, And that's what I did. From there, the head coach of one of the Polish teams, Zdzisław Niedziela, asked the translator, would I mind staying on, like playing basketball there? Of course, I couldn't because I got college left, but that was very flattering.
You returned back to the US, and why do you sort of then decide actually playing basketball in Poland might be a good idea for you? What are the reasons that you decide on that?
So when I finished college, I had a pretty good college career. The Los Angeles Lakers were interested in me. I went out to a pre-camp. I played well, but I'm not on the NBA level. And so I had another half year of school because basketball got in the way of academics. And I graduated, and my father said, if you want to follow up on anything, you can. And I asked him, would it be okay too? So they were my mother was kind of leery. My father was kind of, get this out of your system. So I telegraphed Poland. Back then, you had to telegraph places. We corresponded. And the next thing you know, I had a plane ticket to leave January 4th, 1979, to go play professional basketball in Poland.
This is the start of your sort of almost love affair with Polish culture as well, because you really immerse yourself in Polish life. But I mean, you're playing for KS Start in Lublin. Can you tell me what it was like when you first met your new teammates, and how quickly were you accepted?
So when I was at JFK Airport and I was on my way to Poland, to Warsaw, I was sitting in the airport, and I think people were kind of wondering, where does he think he's going? And as I got onto the airplane, finally a stewardess asked me, why are you going to Poland? Like, what's your bit? And I told her very proudly that I'm going to play pro basketball there. And she was like, really? There's basketball in Poland, But I guess that got around the passages. And when I got to Warsaw, I was picked up by the driver, Stanisław Majdan, my coach, Zdzisław Niedziela, and my translator and good friend now, Wojtek Piepielek. And we went to a hotel, and my first meal was beef tartare. And I never saw raw beef before, uncooked, with a egg yolk in it and all that. So I asked, could they make a hamburger out of it? And they just laughed like, oh, here's a dumb American already, So we drive to Lublin that day, and I was supposed to watch the first practice that evening, but I wasn't there to watch. So I got dressed. Wojtek took me there, and meeting my teammates, I actually recognized many of them from when we played college against them. So I recognized them, and they obviously knew me. So we shake hands, and there's this traditional Polish three kisses on alternate cheeks. So we did that. And right there, I learned that the coach did it the first time he met me. Wojtek did it, obviously. So I know right there that these guys are embracing me. That moment there told me that, okay, you're here to play with us. And we had our first the practice. Things went great. The second day, the next day, we had two practices. Of course, they got the morning and the afternoon. And after the morning practice, Adam asked me, "Do you want to take a sauna?" And I've never taken a sauna before, but I'm a teammate now. So, of course, yes. So we go down there and they're kind of smiling, the smug smile, and we get in the sauna. And I'm sitting there, there's a group of us, maybe 8 or 9 guys, and they start to ladle the water onto the rocks. So the steam is coming up and it gets hot quick. And I'm sitting up top where you're not supposed to be sitting when you can't do that. And I learned quickly that I'm going to have to adapt into this sauna thing. So I go like running out of there with my body on fire. And they had come back to the locker room. And I think it was one of those hazing kind of moments where they're letting me know, if you want to be with us, these are the things you must do. And I'm letting them know I'm doing this every morning with you. And that was part of the teammates that you have to endure as an American.
Yeah, sort of like an initiation test. It must have been quite difficult for a Polish team to get agreement from the Polish government to bring a US player over.
Yeah, the story behind that, I try to describe in the book the best I was told. How true that story is, I'm not sure. But I was told there was all kind of committees. They were coming from Lublin to Warsaw to the sport and the culture department. They were having all kind of talks. And at one point, the question was asked point blank, can we bring in an American here to play? And it was answered, I don't know. So the Lublin people that were there took that as yes. So they went through a work visa kind of, I think, permit that I'm not really privy to. Now, my translator, Wojtek, he has another subtle answer to this, which I did not write because I saw Wojtek 40 years after. And the book was already out. Wojtek told me that he heard that the Communist Party, part of my getting to Poland, saw this as an opportunity to make the U.S. look bad, whereas a black man can get a job there, but they can here. And we, as the Communist Party, allow black people the ability to get jobs here. So therefore, the West way of doing things may not be as good as we do. So that's what Wojtek told me was said as well. I can't verify it, but that's Wojtek's words.
Sounds fascinating and sounds definitely believable that they would want to score points over the US way of life. Where are you living when you first come over?
The first week or two, I was living in the Hotel Victoria. It was the same hotel that the college stayed in, so I was very familiar with the reception people, the waitresses, the waiters. That's where I first got my first kurczak I frytki, which is chicken and French fries, which I love. And after 2 weeks, I moved to a home about 10 minutes by bus out on the outskirts down a dirt road because roads weren't paved outside of the city. Everything was dirt. And I lived in a home where there was another resident there named Anna, and Babcha Kowalska took care of my every need. She took care of breakfast, lunch, she washed my clothes, she did what was needed to keep me in Poland. And she was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in Poland, except for later my girlfriend. But Babcha, she took care of me. And she had no idea I was Kenny Washington, the basketball player. None. She did not care. I'd be signing autographs like 1 minute. But when I got there, it was all business. Keep your room clean. Take your shoes off before you come in. It's all of those things. Babcha Kowalska.
In the book, you describe both Babcha and Anna as sort of like family for you, certainly in those first, years that you were in Poland.
Absolutely, they were. I mean, they taught me which knife to use to cut bread, kielbasa, when you put the tea leaves in to the hot water, wait till they sink before you start drinking it. I mean, all of these little like subtleties that they would kind of smile at. But they taught me these things, and they were there every day. I mean, Anna got up early and got milk and, the bread, things like that. And Babcha, she fed me and she washed my clothes. They were my Polish family then. And I counted on them. I couldn't speak, but we would figure out how to kind of get things done, through nonverbal like gestures.
I was going to ask about language because you get there and you maybe know yes and thank you in Polish, but that's about all you know. And you're sort of traveling in on your own on the bus to the training ground as well. So, I mean, I can imagine you were a curiosity on the bus.
yeah, I was a novelty. I mean, I was the first Black person, I'm sure, many Poles have ever seen, ever. So Wojtek bought me some bus tickets. He showed me which kind of kiosk to go to, and from there I would buy a lot of the bus tickets. And then he told me which buses to take, and there were tram buses and there were auto buses too. So when I started to go to practice on my own, walking down my street, people would stare of, obviously out of curiosity. Here's a Black man walking down the street in their neighborhood, and it didn't bother me, I understood. And as time went on, I was now not just a Black guy, but I was Ken Washington, the basketball player. I mean, everybody reads the newspapers. There's like two of them in the town. So slowly but surely, being immersed in the Polish culture, even with my translator there, I would hear the Polish language constantly. And when you're playing sports, you always hear the bad words first, and you kind of figure out what they mean and why one would say them at what time. So I got all that down. Then there's the things like hello, goodbye, how are you, where are you going, the weather. I mean, you start to kind of hear things and you kind of understand the context and content. Then what I did was I turned my radio on and I left it on all day and all night at a low volume, but I think subconsciously I would pick up words and also the melody of the Polish language, and then how you say things, because it's very difficult language for pronunciation. So I would learn that as well. So when you're immersed in it, I mean, Bob just speaks Polish, Anna speaks Polish, the teammates, after a while, you start to be able to make yourself understood and you can understand. My second season there, I had a translator also, but I didn't have them as much, and I began to really understand and speak Polish quickly. The first year was a little less because, I'm still kind of learning things, but we took bus trips and there was no translator, so we had to figure things out, So I got the language down, though.
What were you doing, when you're not playing basketball? What was available for entertainment in Lublin?
Yeah, not much. So television, radio were not a source of entertainment. They were not. So my life was basically 2 practices a day, eat breakfast, eat lunch, rest, Hotel Victoria for dinner, come home and watch my favorite cartoon called Maya, which was a fantastic cartoon with a great theme song. Every Pole knows it. And they had a cartoon called Bolik E, I think Lolek, and I would watch that too. That was a silent cartoon. So that was it. My life was pretty quite simple. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't require a lot of company based on my training days when I was a youngster. I train alone. I don't require a lot of entertainment. I can figure things out on my own. And I knew I was there for one thing: play basketball. So if I wanted to do that, I would have to endure these small obstacles.
How often did you get to go home or have communication with your family at home?
I wrote a few postcards to my niece. I did that. Postcards are simple because you can just write a few things. Letters are difficult for me because I wrote my first letter, and by the time it gets home, it's old news. I mean, it is really old news. So I stopped writing. I did call my first year once, and I went into the director's office, and I was there a couple of months, and I said, "Oh my gosh, my parents must be really worried. Like, what am I doing?" So I go into the office with my translator, and I asked, "Can I call home?" And they are talking amongst each other, and Wojtek says, "Okay, so we have to like reserve a line." And I went, what? He said, "Yeah, we have to reserve an international line. So let him get that done, then he'll tell you, when." So I said, "Well, okay." And I did get to call home, but reserving a line, that's something else that lets you know you're in Poland.
What was shopping like for you? I mean, getting hold of toiletries and things like that.
That was no problem because I lived with Babcha. So everything was there: food, toilet paper, whatever I needed, they had. The only thing I remember buying with the help of Wojtek were a couple of towels to take showers with at the club. But everything else I was provided for. So I made all of this Polish money. I never spent it except on like dinner at night. I didn't buy anything.
Were you aware of the rise of the free trade union Solidarity? in 1980. What did you see of that, of the changes that were happening?
That's a great question. And the short answer is no. I was living life there unaware of what was going on around me. And actually, Lublin, I later found out, was one of the first strikes there. There was some place that struck for higher wages, and I had no idea. I mean, I was going from home, basketball practice, games, different cities all over Poland, crowds of people playing, and was totally unaware what was happening in the country. My teammates and by my second year, I could speak a little bit and I could understand. I never heard them talk about anything. So I was totally unaware. And, Anna, Bobcha, teammates, even my translator, Tadic, the second year, he never mentioned anything about any strikes or any uprisings or any boycott. And there was like food in the stores and there was stuff. So you don't see anything, you don't hear anything. I can't really read anything. The news that comes on television, I'm not listening to it for content. I'm just hearing words that I'm trying to kind of like recognize. So I'm living in Poland during the early times before, I guess, solidarity really hit and other problems came, unaware of what was actually going on around me.
Did you experience any racism while you were there?
Very, very little. There was an occasional drunk, of course, at the Hotel Victoria, which would say something to me until they found out I was Ken Washington. Then all that changed. Sorry. This is Ken Washington. It's Ken Washington. So I don't. So I never faced it that way. At games, there was the famous, I write about it, the Kunta Kinte game when I go into a Legia Warsaw and we're warming up. And, there's the chants, of course. And then out of nowhere, Kunta Kinte, Kunta Kinte. So all these hundreds and hundreds of people are chanting Kunta Kinte. So my teammates kind of looking at me, and I'm thinking, are they saying what I think they're saying? And I continue the warm ups, and then I figure out, you know what? I'm going to give these people a game they've never seen before. And after the game was done, they came like rushing out of the stands again, hugging and kissing me, the autographs. So that was more of a, I guess, heckling thing. Little did I know that the series Roots was being televised there, or had been. That's how they knew the character Kunta Kinte. Beside that, from what I could understand, could fans be like saying things that were like racial slurs that I didn't know, hear, understand? I guess. But walking up and down my street, going to home, to town, back and forth, different, like cities where we would walk around before games, never.
Was it difficult to move around for you because of your popularity? Were you getting bugged for autographs and
Yeah.
just talking to you, I guess?
Yeah, that happened in Lublin in the early parts. Yeah, no question. People wouldn't stop me unless my translator was was there because they couldn't talk to me. So as soon as Wojtek was there, all hell broke loose. I mean, we'd be walking down the street and people would just kind of come over and just start asking questions. They want autographs, and Wojtek would try to translate. But it kind of calmed down the longer I was there. when I went home on the bus, walking through town, going to the hotel to get dinner in the hotel, eating dinner, people would stare, but they wouldn't come up to you because they can't really communicate with you. So, but there were times where with Wojtek, where there were like crowds of people. Yeah.
And you even got a part in a Polish film.
Yes, I did. So that's a story in itself. Where after one of our practices, Wojtek and I are called into the director's office, and he says to me, we have this part in a film that they want you to be involved in. So I said, really? They said, yeah. Yes, part of the film. So I'm kind of like standoffish. I don't have time for that. And the director said, it would be a good thing for the club, So we did it. Wojtek and I drive to Warsaw, meet the director who's really, really famous. I didn't know then. And I do a dribbling scene in a film where the star brags that he used to be a Harlem Globetrotter. So he's trying to impress his girlfriend. And I come out, I do the dribbling, and that's that. Years later, I find out this is one of the most popular cult comedies in Poland. Little did I know. So I guess it was a good move.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bizarre scene. I did find the clip on YouTube, so I will add that to the episode notes so people can watch that. Now, in 1981, you switched teams. What's the story around that?
Yes. So the first 2 seasons there, we had great teams. We were very successful. I went home. I usually go home the summers from mid-May to mid-August. So I came back mid-August in 80, and two of our starting players left our team. Our coach left our team, and our third starter retired. That's the price of success. People want more money, and other teams offer it, or an apartment, a car. So that year, we had a very tough year, and our team got relegated to the first league. Upon that, teams started to contact me, and one of them that did was Zangwembe Sosnowiec, which is outside of Katowice. And they wound up buying my rights to negotiate a new contract, which I signed. So when I came back in 81 August, I went straight there. So now I was in Sosnowiec, and my girlfriend, Bojana, came with me.
And how did you meet Bojana?
Yeah, well, that was in Lublin. She was a track person there, hecathlon. And we bumped into each other at a swimming pool. I was getting my ankle rehabilitated in this very weird way that Polish rehabilitates ankles. It's in the book. It's really, really different. And she came over, and I spoke Polish then, and she started to talk to me. And not many young girls did that then, had I guess, the courage. And we started talking, and she asked, well, what do you do when you're not playing? And I go to the hotel and I eat dinner. She said, why don't you come home and have dinner with my mom and me? I said, fine. And one thing led to another. We started to hang out. And when I moved, she moved there because she was a track person, and they had a very big track program in Katowice.
So that must have been a different experience for you now living in Poland, because you haven't got, somebody getting everything for you like you were in Lublin. This is real life,
Yep.
queuing up for stuff and things like that. Can you just describe some of those experiences you had?
Yeah, well, the first part of my life there, things were fine. Things were in the stores. We would go and buy what we needed when we needed things. So no problem at all. December 13th, 1981, everything changed.
Ken is referring here to the Polish Communist government's declaration of martial law. This was done in order to try and suppress the Solidarity Free Trade Union and other opposition groups.
That morning when we woke up, it was evident that the neighbors and everybody was in an uproar in the apartment building. We could see I don't want to say tanks, but the army vehicles, the military the vehicles in Sosnovich. Bojana had known because she trained in Vica that they were striking there, and my teammates knew that they were talking about it because, your teammates have family, and some family members worked in the coal mines because most people did. That was a big business. So it touches everyone, but no one was really talking about it until December the 13th, because life was still kind of going on for the rest of us. And if you weren't actively striking, you really didn't know what was actually going on. So I'm living life as a Polish person. I mean, I totally forget that I'm American there. I mean, because I speak Polish, I don't speak English, I am immersed in it. So when that happened, we get the rationing cards. Mine's is a coal mining card, which allows more meat, the coal miners. Jenna got a student card, which basically you don't get anything if you're a student. I mean, you don't need to eat. So between that, she figured out how to get things done. She's got a sister that lives close to. Also, the head board of the basketball team made sure that we had what we needed at all times. The other players on the team and we would trade things. I mean, I don't drink or smoke, so I would trade those those kind of the coupons for like meat coupons. So we all kind of took care of each other. I never felt threatened. I never feared. Um, we would stand in line if we needed to. That wasn't necessarily always the case. Neighbors in the building would sometimes they would know where to go. They would hear things from like someone who worked at a store, what may be coming in, and you would wind up going there. So there were all kind of methods that Polish people knew, very resourceful, a lot of bartering because money was worthless. I mean, I was making close to 35,000 zloty a month, which is just crazy money over there. Crazy. But you can't buy anything unless you go behind and you got to pay someone off. So she would get things done, and we had everything we actually needed. It was strange because you would go to someone's house and the store's like bare. And as soon as you go over there, they got meat and coffee and all this stuff. It's like, where's everybody getting this stuff? They they got it. They arranged it.
Were you in contact at all with the US Embassy during this period? Because I would have thought that they might want to evacuate you if things got worse.
Yeah, that is the $1 million question. So the quick answer is no. No, I was never contacted. And I've asked Cold War Polish history experts, a lot of people, why do you think that is? They can speculate, but no one really knows. I was never contacted by the embassy. I was never expelled by the communist government. So I don't know. I mean, it sounds so incredibly weird that do they not know I'm there? I mean, I may have been, and this, I have trouble actually saying it, but I may have been one of the most popular Americans in the country during that 4-year period, very possibly. And they don't know I'm there. So I mean, I struggle with this all the time. Like my mother could have been watching President Reagan on December 23rd when he gave the national speech about Poland when the Polish ambassador and his wife defected and the unrest there. She could have been watching it, not knowing whether I'm safe. So she watch it? No, but she could have been. And in a biopic, they probably let her watch. They would have her watch it for the drama. But I was never contacted. And even after I went back home in May, and I came back in 1982 again to play the next year, I was never contacted by the U.S. Embassy. There was no contact. I was going back and forth for 5 seasons, basically, with no problem. None.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Have you ever looked up your SB file, your Polish intelligence file?
Yes, I filled out the Freedom of Information Act. Somebody helped me with it. They said they had nothing. So I don't know whether I need help doing it again or going through different kind of channels, but I I can't believe there's nothing. I mean, how can there not be anything?
Yeah, I can't believe there's nothing either. I mean, I had a friend who was looking up his Czechoslovak intelligence file, and it came back with something, but not much. And then a historian contacted him and said, "Oh, I found a load of other stuff about you, and there was a load of other information there." So, yeah, I find it hard to believe that there wasn't a file of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, these are the questions that I have that when I speak with folks like you and other like scholars that I ask them because I have no answer for it. And I'm often asked, I was at Columbia University speaking to some people, and a professor there asked me, was I spied on? I said, I don't know. They're very good at it.
Yeah, have you done a Freedom of Information request to see whether there's an FBI file on you?
Yeah, I don't know how to go about it, so I would have to contact someone who understands what I should or could do to find that out. I am interested to know, did the small circle of I don't want to call them politicians, but I'm sure that there was a small circle that President Reagan had that had eyes on this Polish, the unrest. And did they know that I was there? I mean, I really don't know. If you know folks that could get to that, be good. That's great. That's a great
Yeah.
story in itself.
Yeah, let me see what I can find there. I mean, I tend to subscribe, rather than conspiracy, the cock-up theory of history, where somehow you slip through the cracks at the State Department or something like that, and they didn't know you were there, because it does seem quite surprising. So with martial law and living in Poland, you're getting much more of an awareness of what solidarity was about, I guess, through your girlfriend as well. She's explaining more about what's going on.
She knew. I mean, it seemed like I don't want to say regular Polish people, but it seemed like there's the inside, the activists, the people who have family that know more. We didn't have any family that were activists. I mean, she was getting information from the teammates she trained with, her coach. I was getting it from my teammates, but you had to be careful who you spoke to and what you said. And we were told that by one of our neighbors. Be careful who you talk to. So we were kind of reluctant to, I mean, I know I was, to ask anything. I kept everything, like basketball at the practices. I was there to play basketball, nothing else. When I walked to and from the practices, there were a lot of like like soldiers that were with, hey, Ken Washington changed, Ken Washington. And they were like calling me. So I didn't have any fear there either. They knew who I was. I never had my passport. That was home. So I never got stopped for anything. When we were at the practices, there may have been a military guard out front of the door, because you weren't supposed to be really in groups then, but you could go to work. So practice was work. That was okay. There were curfews. I know we had to rearrange some of our practice times to meet the curfew. Games were suspended for a few weeks. Then we started to play again. And Bojana and I and her sister and her boyfriend traveled from Sosnovich to Lublin for Christmas Day. So we did travel. I don't recall so many roadblocks and that much stuff. I don't really recall that. But I knew that times were different. I didn't feel afraid, but I knew things were a lot, a lot different. But I didn't know exactly what was going on, like what solidarity meant and things like that. But like listening to your Richard, Jacqueline, and people like that, and yourself, I got the inside story, the back story, but I didn't know it then.
Did you listen to Voice of America while you were out there or not?
Never.
You just listened to Polish
Yeah.
radio and
Yeah.
immersed yourself and focused on the basketball, almost like you had at home. Where basketball was it.
That was my solitude.
Now, I understand while you were in Poland, you did have a number of speaking engagements. What were those about? What were you invited to speak about?
Yes. So one was at Biała Podlaska, the university there. That was a sporting university where they really study to be just coaches and things in the sport world. And we were invited there, two of the players and my translator, Wojtek. And I got some great pictures from it too, actually. And we spoke about the USA sports and things like that. And then the students started to ask different kind of questions, like how are Black people treated in the USA, things like that. And it turned into a beyond sports. It turned into a cultural exchange. And at the time, I didn't really think about it so much, but as I think back, it was really a cool thing to do with people basically the same age being able to talk about each other's culture willingly without any stereotypes, without any like negativity, without comparing. And it seemed really unique. That was a really great thing. I think that may have opened up doors. I never saw myself as an ambassador or anything like that. But when I look back, I mean, I was the only American voice that they could hear without it being filtered. And it was unique in that I could hear them without it being filtered either. And I guess that's the moment when I look back that I was an ambassador for Black America, and it seemed incredible now. Then I didn't think much of it. I was just in the moment. But when I look back, it's special.
Absolutely. Did the communist government try and coerce you to speak about anything or, appear at official events or anything like that as a representative?
Absolutely never. I mean, again, if I was spied on, I had no knowledge of it. I went to two universities. I went to a high school to do some kind of dribbling exhibition. These were things that were arranged by the club. I went to a town called Varka, and I played an outdoor exhibition a basketball game, and that was due to my translator, Wojtek, had a friend who asked him, could he bring me there? And, like Wojtek was such a good friend, I can't say no. I mean, my job there was to spread basketball as well, and through that, hopefully people would come to games. I wasn't thinking, they would see Black people differently. That wasn't the motive at all. It was just, I love basketball. If I could promote it in any way, I'll do that. Poland was gracious enough to have me there to play, so I'll do what I need to do to help the sport. And maybe little did I know, I was actually helping to globalize basketball before it became a fashionable thing.
It's interesting the club was asking you to sort of, do things almost like outreach to communities to, as you say, bring the love of basketball to them. For some reason, before I did this interview, I sort of didn't realize how big basketball was in Poland. I hadn't imagined how big it was. Do you know if it was big in other countries of Eastern Europe as well? Or was it a Polish thing?
Russia, huge. The Czech Republic was very good. I can't speak for how popular it was. I mean, first, it was football. I mean, soccer rules. Then, you know, sports come down to team handball, volleyball, basketball, you know. But when I was in Poland playing, I realized handball was a big sport. I realized volleyball was a big sport. I realized bicycling internationally, it was a big sport, track and field. But at the time, I've heard rumors of that when I was playing there, that 4 or 5 years, basketball had moved very high up the list where I was being compared to top soccer players and things of that nature. Now, I can't speak to the truth of it, but I heard that. And that's the whole point of the book being called Kentomania, because I caused this popularity, chaoticness of all of the cities we went to. Tickets was sold out immediately. Uh, you know, it was that. So basketball started to really rival, and the national team placed seventh in the Olympics in '80. Now, also the U.S. boycotted that, which helped, you know, the Poles. But still, that was their highest like finish in like decades. I actually got to practice with the Polish national team, which could be a first there too. First American ever ever practice with a communist national team behind the Iron Curtain. And they liked me so much, they invited Coach Lezak over to help them. So that was huge. That was a great week. And things like that humble you after, because you don't realize that they really thought that much of you, and they actually did.
I mean, if they'd offered you dual Polish nationality and they invited you to play for the Polish team, would you have done that?
My father would kill me, but at that time in my life, there's no question I would have. There's no question I would have. I mean, as crazy as it seems, at that point in my life, the, who I was, that obsessive basketball kid, to be able to play with the Polish national team, I would have said yes. I would have changed my nationality to Polish. There wouldn't have been any dual citizenship either. So, you know, I I was interviewed by a Polish woman, and she said to me, "Your story is so unique that I thought it was fiction. I thought it was a Hollywood script gone bad until I looked you up and saw that this really happened." She said, "Who would ever dream or think that a Black American would go to Poland during that time period and not only play and get out, but stay for 4 or 5 seasons and remain before and after?" She said, "Hollywood couldn't even write a script. Like, who would even imagine this?" Because I did it, I didn't think anything of it. But the way other people look at it is like, this is stranger than fiction.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a fantastic story. And I mean, your dad being upset that you'd taken Polish nationality, I mean, when he sent you off there, he said, do your own thing. So you were doing your own thing, weren't you?
I guess I was, but to be Polish and to lose my American citizenship, I don't know how happy he would have been.
No, no. So you leave Poland in 1984. Why do you leave?
Yeah. So at the end of my career, our last game with Zagłębie Sosnowiec, we traveled to West Germany to play in an international tournament. The Polish national team went to the States, so they chose our club team to take its place. We played against the the Russian national team, the Soviet national team, the West German national team, and the Swedish national team. And during the tournament, I played very well. Crowds got crazy again. That whole thing started again. The autographs, the newspapers, and a Swedish coach saw me play and asked me would I mind coming to Sweden and play there. And because I thought I kind of ran my time out in Poland and the currency in Sweden is a lot different. Lifestyle, I didn't really know or care, but I knew it wasn't worse than Poland or, so I switched. I went to, so it was a difficult decision. I was really tormented by it because I love my club, the teammates, but even my teammates and coach saw how much attention I was getting when I was playing there, and they kind of saw the writing on the wall.
Your love for Poland has come through, throughout this interview. What would you say was the best thing that happened to you while you were in Poland?
The best thing was that I was embraced by the Polish people, from Anna Babczyk-Kowalska, my Lublin teammates, coach, the fans. And when I went to Zagłębie, I was embraced by my teammates there, the fans, my neighbors. I think that's the story. That's why I wrote the book, because I wanted people to know my feelings toward Poland at that time, and especially the Polish people, how they actually treated me. That's the story, not the basketball.
That's great. And what would you say was the worst thing that happened to you while you were in Poland?
The worst thing that happened to me while I was in Poland. Part of it is the fact that I had to leave Poland, but I think, I'm happily married now. But I think leaving Bożena the way it happened was something that I regret at the time, because it was, I was leaving a person behind that I really liked. And although she's happily married, I'm sure, I'm happily married, that was probably the worst thing. The leaving my teammates, the club, the people, the sport that I helped make better, that was the worst thing, if that makes sense.
You have been listening to Kent Washington, Kentomania, a black basketball virtuoso in communist Poland, is his book. There will be links in the episode notes as to where you can purchase that. I highly recommend it. It's a unique story, and Kent, it definitely should be a movie. So if there's any directors listening, they should get in contact with you.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, I hear this quite often, and I'm humbled by it. I hear it constantly. Oh, this is a documentary. Oh, this is a film. It's such a great story, and I wish it could happen, because I think it is a special story that is so unique that a lot of people think it's fiction. So thank you for that.
The episode extras, such as videos, photos and other content, are available via a link in the episode information. The podcast wouldn't exist without the generous efforts of our financial supporters, and I'd like to thank one and all of them for keeping the podcast on the road. The Cold War conversation continues in our Facebook discussion group. Just search for Cold War Conversations in Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to seeing you next week.